What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Willing Gas Startups podcast. We're back for round 2 after, I don't know, it's probably been at least 2 years. Yeah.
Exactly, almost.
Ben Heinzelman, Energy Domain. What's up, man?
We skated into town today.
You made it in town alive.
Yeah.
Barely.
Ice storms across Texas. Yeah. Ben was like, hey, we're going to try to make it there. We're driving down from Dallas. I told Jake, because I'm pretty...
Fort Worth, not Dallas.
Fort Worth, sorry.
We don't associate with those.
Yeah, we don't associate.
I told Jake, I was like, highly doubtful that y'all made it down here in time for the podcast, but y'all made it down here.
Dude, we did great. My guy Preston got his dad's truck, 4x4. We made it, and I was telling Jake we smoked a couple seagulls on the way down too.
Nice, yeah. Nothing's gonna. Are you a landman by background?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing's gonna stop the landman bros from getting down here for
No, and it's kind of funny. I picked up one of my landman bros as well on the way down here because he needed a ride. He was supposed to fly out, and they grounded all the flights.
So he just made a
he mentioned the same thing.
Him.
He was like, our wives are always pissed off when we leave because they already hate Nate because we're gone for 2 days and all we're doing is having a good time and partying and stuff. And then you throw in the whole Ice-Mageddon and all that, and they're inside with the kids. It makes it that much worse. So,
well, fortunately, this podcast will go out in a few weeks, and so
there you go.
Your wife won't know how much fun
right. She don't know. I expect a lot of pumpkin patch activities and park time.
Yeah.
This weekend for sure.
So we gotta recap and kind of catch up. It's crazy. It's been 2 years.
I know.
Time flies, man. But you guys, at the time of that podcast, still had Mineralware and had this idea of Energy Domain, started working on it. Since then, sold Mineralware, had an acquisition there, 8 months ago?
April, yeah.
Okay, cool. So a little less than a year ago. So we're going to dive into all of that, talk about Energy Domain. First, let's give everyone some context about Energy Domain and what that is and what you guys are working on.
Yeah, so Energy Domain's an oil and gas online marketplace, now kind of also becoming a data company as well, which we'll talk about a little bit. And to kind of go back a little bit, I talked about this a little bit on the last podcast, but it was becoming pretty evident, as we were growing Mineralware, we brought on a lot of these institutional buyers of minerals, non-op, so on and so forth, that were using the platform.
And that was a platform to manage minerals,
yeah,
right?
Correct.
Okay.
So Mineralware was a SaaS product, just a cloud-based solution to help mineral and royalty owners, static owners, or aggregators better manage their property. So it merged public data in with revenue data, that sort of thing, document management, and all that. And so over the course of the first 4 or 5 years, we kind of stayed more in kind of the static owner lane, if you will. So kind of your older family offices, universities, hospitals, that sort of thing that own minerals, wealthy individuals. And then it became necessary for us just because there was such a need in the space to move into that institutional side, which we did. They required more bells and whistles and specific features to track return on investment and all that stuff. Slicing and dicing. And so the feedback we started to get from our clients on that side was, hey, we feel like there's a gigantic opportunity to create a more up-to-date marketplace in the space. They felt like we could leverage our technical expertise building Mineralware and apply that to this new marketplace. And so that really was the genesis of Energy Domain back in 2019. So I ran sales for Mineralware for 5 or 6 years. I was our only salesperson there for a while. We brought on a guy named Jason Fitzgerald who took over sales for Mineralware that allowed me to jump over and kind of help start Energy Domain. And so it really took us, it was a little different than Mineralware, which was a first to market type product where we could kind of throw out a half-ass solution and commercialize it. This was something that, you've had kind of some legacy systems out there that have been around for a while. And we felt like, if we're going to roll something out, it's got to be better from day one. And that obviously took time and capital. So it took us a couple years to build the platform, another year to get our licenses and all that stuff. So we are a licensed broker dealer as well, which was, let me tell you,
is a bitch.
Yeah. Well, the last time that I met with you guys, I couldn't really talk about it at the time, but that was probably the most stressful time of my life. I mean, you're going through COVID, which we'll get into this a little bit in the behavioral stuff, but the way that I'm wired, I have to be around people all the time.
Yeah.
And that certainly was not the case at the time. So at home with my wife and kids, just like the last couple of days.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was a time where we're building the platform. We're burning through a lot of money every month. And each month that we can't get licensed, it's just another month we're not generating revenue.
Yeah.
So it was stressful. So anyways, we kind of got through the licensing, which, as you can imagine, dealing with the feds and in it itself is already difficult enough. Do that during COVID, where they're not all in the office at the same time. Everything's through Zoom. You're basically educating these people on what oil and gas is. And anyway, so we finally got through it. So we initially intended to launch actually February of 2020, and we actually didn't avoid launch because of COVID. We avoided launch because we wanted to go this broker-dealer route. Ultimately, we made that decision literally like a week before COVID even became a thing. So we get down to NAPE. It was really more of just kind of a show and tell more than anything else. Here's how the platform works, so on and so forth. But we really were not in a place where we could start selling deals yet. We were really trying to push it so we could start to make some money. But and honestly, if you can say COVID was fortuitous timing for anything, it really was for us, because it gave us another year to really kind of dial in the platform a little bit, add some features that we really had slated for V2 and
It's
V3.
funny you say that, because we kind of feel the same way about digital wildcatters.
Yeah.
We went to raise a seed round in March, and I'm glad that we didn't raise at that time, because it gave us a lot more time to really look inward and figure out our business model and who we actually were as a company, and think about products that we could build. And so
it takes time. Takes time, takes you trying things. We explored a lot of different options.
Oh yeah.
Made some mistakes on
our
own dime. Our own dime.
Yeah.
And then when the time was ready, then we were able to,
because had that trajectory not been dialed in, and say you're 10 degrees off, right? And you just, hit the NOS button, right? You end up 2 miles from where you need to be.
Yeah. There's no question. And I think, I happen to think it was more of a divine intervention type thing. If we had launched in February, we would not be a business today. There's no question in my mind.
Yeah.
And so it gave us the opportunity. We built kind of a fully automated, mostly automated closing dashboard that we've integrated with escrow.com. And that's kind of a product in itself.
It's so funny. I've never been on escrow.com until 30 minutes ago. I had to sign up to buy this domain. So it's funny
if you need a contact over there.
It's funny that you brought them up.
Yeah.
What was the biggest thing you guys learned? Like you said, you wouldn't be in business had you not, or had you raised money at that time?
Or would have COVID just killed you because deals weren't happening? Or
I'd say that's number one. But also, I think with something like this, you really kind of have one shot on the A&D side with your reputation.
Yeah.
And so you push something out that just is not as good as the competition, there's no reason to go with us, And so, for us, we've really had to kind of chip away. I think that at times there's a negative stigma around buying and selling properties online for whatever reason. I think fortunately for us, you have a lot of the kind of the boomer generation that is retiring, and those were kind of the folks that initially were kind of the headwinds, I guess, if you will, for selling properties online. If I had to imagine, I'm kind of rushing to judgment a little bit, but now you kind of have the millennials. But you have the millennials that are taking over these managerial positions, and we all grew up putting in your social security number on websites, and here's my driver's license. Like, we're not thinking twice about anything like that, So it's a lot more. It's much more of an accepted type thing in our industry today. So
I mean, literally today we just dropped 25 racks on a domain. I mean,
there you go.
Just do that.
Just do that online. Yeah. So, once we got our licensing and all that, we finally launched in June of 21.
Okay.
Which was, that it was perfect timing, with the commodity environment. It kind of come back a little bit. There were people were starting to warm up again to buying and selling oil and gas properties. So when we first launched, just from our mineralware days, as I mentioned, we had non-op aggregating companies as well. A vast majority of our client base, though, were mineral and royalty aggregators or legacy owners. And so that's the world that we came from. And so, as you can imagine, most of our deal flow day one was really kind of slated that direction.
Yeah.
And so, in the first, I should say the first 6 months, we could really started to gain some momentum, started to sell some deals. And honestly, I remember the first deal So, because you kind of conceptualize this whole thing right in your head. You go to bed at night, you grind on this stuff, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and you're always kind of thinking like, what if we don't even sell a deal, you know? I remember getting a call like the first person that wanted to transact to one of our buy it now prices. It was like Christmas. We got that first deal underneath us, and it was kind of it was just balls to the wall at that point.
Probably a pretty good feeling. Like,
it was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing.
Actually worked.
Yeah, exactly. And then just to get the validation from a lot of folks that, we had a lot of people that I've talked to that are just in my network from day one that when I talked about the negative stigma of buying and selling online, a lot of it is because, there are other places that will host assets that might be really, really carved up. And a lot of the institutional buyers might avoid going there, looking at deals, just because it doesn't kind of fit the normal profile of a full asset sale, which is what a lot of the institutional buyers are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think we were able to kind of turn that around. I don't allow a lot of the super chopped up stuff on our platform, which is there some revenue we're missing out on? Certainly. I think that, half of it for me is reputation and trying to maintain a positive image on that side. So
let's talk about, for you, like, what does an institutional deal size, like, minimum look like for y'all? You talk about like not having like broken up assets. I mean, are these deals that are like $10 million minimum deals? Is there anything from like an economic perspective of what qualifies in your mind?
Well,
as
when
an
I say
institutional
chopped
deal?
up, what I mean is guys that will go buy, and I'm just making up examples here, but 100 net royalty acres, and they carve it into 100 different lots, right? In like the same section,
Mhm.
essentially. That we just made a strategic decision early on that that's not the route we wanted to go. There's plenty of other platforms for that, and that's
Mhm.
great. Ultimately, for us, we wanted to be able to get into some of the larger deals as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what I mean by chopping up deals.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I've had guys come to me with 3,000 to 5,000 net royalty acres in Oklahoma or elsewhere, and they'll say, "Hey, what do you think is the best way to squeeze a dime? Squeeze the most dimes out of this deal." In a lot of cases, it does make sense to kind of carve up geographically, a certain subset of properties and auction it off, not only just based on the geographics of it, but also the deal size.
Mm.
Because obviously, you get into kind of the 50K up to like $500,000 range, your buyer pool obviously increases pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
Because you have individual investors that are just wealthy that want to buy into oil and gas. They think it's cool, or they just obviously with what's happening in the markets today, it's attractive to them.
Yeah.
So this is operated properties, non-ops.
Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned that. It's kind of the direction I was going. Is we started with minerals and royalties initially, and it became pretty evident that with how competitive the mineral space and the royalty space has gotten over the last several years, there's a lot more capital now chasing non-op. It's very obvious, and so that really was just kind of a natural evolution for us. We started to bring on more non-op deals. I would say now 35 to 40% of our deal flow is non-op. We just sold our first operated package this last month, which has become now a focus for us as well. Obviously, we're never going to ignore an entire vertical of oil and gas property sales. And so because we had been focused kind of in these first two initial verticals of minerals and non-op, I knew there was a lot more meat on the bone. And so we raised some capital in December that we closed on. I know you and I talked about it quite a bit in y'all's process as well, but that was a huge weight off of our shoulders. But
let's talk about that, because closing capital in December of 2022 was, if you're closing any amount of capital in that time, like, congrats, because we raised a little bit of equity too. Mm-hmm. Closed a bridge round. You guys closed, and there's not a lot of people that were closing any amounts of money in that time, because it's probably the most brutal time in the last 15 years for any type of fundraising, just given macro environment.
There's a lot of gray hair for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we spent 6 to 7 months, trying to raise a larger number, and then realized pretty quick, like, hey, for us to build some additional products and solutions, it's going to take X, and what's the best way for us to do that? So we just broke it up into smaller pieces, and we had it filled out in 3 weeks as opposed to the first 6 or 7 months.
Yeah.
So it was really kind of a light bulb moment for us. It was one of those things we were raising the first round. I know you guys kind of ran into this as well, but you're kind of getting to a place where you have all these people that are really interested, love working with you, and they're like, yeah, but tell me when you get a lead, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, that's why I'm calling you.
But on our side of GW, we've been very fortunate that we've had several people that were very quick to be first
great.
money in, and so you get that one, and that always feels good to build some momentum on that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's anyone that makes fundraising sound like easy.
It's horrible.
We'll go raise some money. Like, it fucking sucks.
Well, I'll be honest. Like
dude,
our deal flow slowed down pretty dramatically from September through November. Yeah, because I was spending 75% of my time fundraising. I was I was half of our business development.
Dude, no, that's what Jake can attest to. How many conversations I've brought up. I'm like, man, I would rather just stop raising capital and help
focus on the business instead.
Yeah.
Help sales and make some money.
So I know it's a huge weight off of our shoulders to get to that point. And what I'm really proud of is that, so we brought on 4 new investors. 3 of those investors are Mineralware clients. And the 4th one is a guy who has bought and sold properties on Energy Domain.
Nice.
So these are guys that, they trust us as a management team. They've seen us, create solutions in the past. And
so let's talk about the platform a little bit, because, it doesn't sound like it's just a listing service. You said that institutional investors require some more bells and whistles. So let's talk about like what you guys actually do as a platform. Say operator X has an asset on there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys actually facilitating the transaction? Like, is revenue passing through the platform? Are you just connecting buyer and seller, giving some information? Are you running any type of analysis on that asset before you put it on the platform? Like, tell us. I don't know, that's like super loaded.
Yeah,
that's
right.
A lot of stuff.
But yeah, no, that's a good question. It depends on the type of asset. The smaller transactions, typically, especially if it's like a really straightforward royalty deal, we'll take an upfront deposit, we'll typically that will flow through. We'll hold it in escrow.
Yeah.
We will facilitate the closing, that sort of thing. So, there is some administrative, there's an administrative piece that goes on in the background. Obviously in a perfect world, if you could automate that fully, that would be wonderful. Unfortunately, the entire industry is used to kind of having their handheld, and you're really just kind of a step behind if you don't have a white glove approach on that side. So the money is not, technically flowing through us until the deal closes. And then we keep our, the deposit essentially as a commission.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's kind of the high level. It just, it's from an underwriting standpoint. So we don't have like a full on technical staff at this time. That's kind of part of what this raise is for. So our COO, Malcolm Smith, is former head of subsurface at EQT for several years, and he moved his family down from Pittsburgh because he believes so much in what we were doing. There's not many guys that are as smart as he is. You want to talk about somebody that covers up my weaknesses? I'm kind of big picture, dumb landman guy. He's the grinded out ops guy. You talked about like trying to hire an integrator.
Yeah,
he's our integrator. So anyways, we have several deals that we're working on now where I can have him step in, and he has all these tools already built, in Spotfire and whatnot, where he can run some economics extremely quickly.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the type of asset. Usually based on, especially some of the larger deals, we'll do a seal bid. And, in that case, like, it's really more than anything, we're just trying to give the seller a general range. Buyers are always going to underwrite their own economics and all that anyways.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the general gist of it. Long term, I would say I never want to be a shop that has 5 or 6 engineers on staff.
Yeah.
I'd really like to use tools when we can.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's unavoidable to have a couple folks on staff to handle those larger transactions.
So you said you were glad that you guys didn't launch when you originally were going to launch, because you wanted to build a product that was at least, better than what you thought was currently on the market. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about that, on kind of diving into both the buyer and the seller side. Like, how do you guys see yourself differentiating in the market?
I would say number one is the speed in which we can create listings. So we've built some pretty incredible tools in the front end that
usually a pretty long process.
Yes. Yeah. Usually you're taking documents from sellers, trying to aggregate information, map properties in the event that seller even wants them mapped. mapping wells, pulling in revenue information, JIBs, LOE, the whole deal, like a lease operating statement. So, obviously from our days at Mineralware, we spent years trying to understand the process of revenue, check stub data, revenue, or JIBs and all that stuff. And so we've applied a lot of the same concepts to, we have a couple engines that we've built that process all that data, provide a lot of visualizations, automap properties, automatically associate API numbers and all that. So we can pull in, an asset, let's say it's a 2,000 well asset. Somebody gives us a list of wells in counties and states. And then, in less than 5 minutes, we can spit out a CSV that pulls in the APIs and also maps them in Esri, which we use as our just kind of base mapping platform. So I'd say that's kind of number one. So we're really set up to scale as we've brought on a couple more business development folks, which I'll talk about in a bit. But then also on the buyer side, so there's still a lot of tools we want to add on from an eval standpoint. So from our Mineralware days, we put all the same processes in place any of the big data providers did early on to pull in state data. So from all the producing states. So we've normalized, kind of scrubbed that data. Now we're in the process of running all of our own allocations as well. Obviously, Malcolm is helping a lot with that. So there are some things that we can do with that through other products, which I won't go into a whole lot of detail yet on that. But most importantly, from the buyer side, we will be building in a valuation tool as well on Energy Domain, just kind of a high level. We're not trying to replace a combo curve or Aries or any of those guys, any of those platforms, but just a high level tool where, because most guys nowadays, when they're underwriting deals, it's a finance guy or a land guy that's getting the first look at it before they pass it off to their engineer.
Yeah.
Right. So why not provide some very quick tools
to eyeball it,
to go in, and say, hey, here, I'm discounting PDP at 9%, 10%. I'm underwriting PUDs at 20%. These are ducks, so I'll underwrite them at 15 or whatever. There's something that's really high level. So that's kind of the direction we're going. Right now, we provide. So when we sold Mineralware, we retained all the IP behind all the well data and all that and production data, and licensed it back to Mineralware. So we retained all that. And so when a buyer is looking at an asset, instead of just looking at a VDR of just the asset, it also provides a 3-mile offset of all the public data that's updated daily.
Mm-hmm.
So when a buyer is looking at an asset, there's a new permit that's filed in that 3-mile offset. They get a notification. So there's a lot of things that we can do with that, which we will long term. But I would say those are kind of the two main things. And then the last piece is just getting into the closing. And how we've kind of automated the closing dashboard and there's one other thing on the buyer side I didn't touch on, which is buyer preferences. So we wanted to get pretty granular, in what buyers are looking for. Obviously, we capture some of the information and the data behind it. Not that we're selling that or anything, but it helps us better target and serve our client base. So when somebody creates a listing or a buyer is getting on our platform, they're looking for a specific type of asset. It's not only, hey, I'm looking for minerals in the Midland Basin. I'm looking for minerals in the Midland Basin, cash flowing $5 to $25,000 a year, or I'm sorry, $25,000 a month, between 5 and 25 net royalty acres. Just kind of a specific metric like that. So the second that, because we're capturing everything down to that granular level of detail, when an asset goes up that meets that criteria, it's automatically notifying our buyers, just like it would on Zillow or any of the similar real estate platforms.
Yeah. Earlier you said that y'all's mechanism is sealed bid for the auction process.
We actually have 3.
Okay.
So we have a normal auction, which is kind of more relegated toward, it's kind of a whole nother conversation, but so we have a typical like live auction, like an eBay auction.
Yeah.
It's a proxy bidding type concept. Then we have a negotiated sale, which is just I make you an offer, you send me a counter offer back and forth.
Yeah.
And then we have the seal bid as well.
So I spent like a year learning about auction theory.
I remember you telling me this in the last,
Did we talk about it? Did I give out the winner's curse?
No, you didn't.
Fact?
I don't think so.
So have you heard of the winner's curse or the buyer's curse? There's this part of economic theory and auction theory that if you win an auction, you overpaid for an asset.
Yeah, right.
And you know who it was coined by? It was petroleum engineers. I can't remember the operator, but it was like back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And they developed this whole thesis that through buying oil and gas properties, like, yeah, you won the auction, but we always overpaid for the asset every
Yeah.
single time. And so I think it's funny how it's a bunch of oil and gas folks that were the ones that stumbled upon this economic theory of the winner's curse.
Yeah, that is funny.
And then bringing up like your like eBay type auction, there's actually this Harvard Business School case study about eBay auctions. I mean, they almost don't exist anymore. Like everything's buy it now. And so 2008, I mean, sharp drop off in eBay auctions. And so there's, all these theories about why it was, maybe there was just too much information out there and there's really no need for auctions. But actually what it was the rise of social media, Harvard determined, because people would just sit there and bid as entertainment in these auctions. And then once social media took their attention, they didn't need the auctions to get that
I don't know if
dopamine
people
hit.
are going
So
to Energy Domain to like just to spend time bidding on $200,000 properties. Well, I don't know. At least I don't know.
wait until I'm rich as shit, dog.
Yeah, right. Maybe
Up one night, just
actually. And right as I said that, I started to think about some of the people I know have bought properties. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know. That we've got a guy that's up in New York. He owns a recycling business.
Oh yeah.
And he'll literally just start throwing out offers on, or like he'll start placing bids on stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of have to like hold him back. I'm like, let's make sure we talk through this,
Yeah.
But that is, in his situation, like that is just straight up play money.
Yeah.
So it'd be really nice.
Gets drunk one night and starts.
I'm gonna buy some shit.
I'm gonna buy this. I'm gonna buy this. Yeah.
So you said you get the options, you get the sealed bid. What's the third one?
Negotiated sale.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between all three of these?
An auction, and it really depends. I mean, auctions are typically relegated towards really heavy PDP assets that are, under $500,000 typically. And we're still learning, right? And kind of what works best in certain scenarios. But that's kind of been my experience, just because there's a lot less subjectivity. It's a math equation at that point in time. Negotiated sale is typically more of a a seller's preference type thing. So if they're not in a huge hurry and they're just wanting to, I don't like to use the term test the market, because we don't like to put stuff up unless the seller's serious. But they're more of I don't really know what it's worth. I just want to kind of put this up and see what's going on and receive an offer. Sealed bids are typically good for assets that have a good combination of PDP and upside. So I'll give you an example. We had a guy that was underwriting one of our Haynesville packages, and on a negotiated sale, once somebody reaches a deal, I mean, it's off the market, right? So I get a call from one of the other buyers that was underwriting this deal. He's like, "Hey man, like what the hell? I spent, I had one of my engineers spend 4 or 5 days underwriting this thing. Had I known that it was almost under contract, I wouldn't have spent that time, or I would have done it earlier." And of course, my initial response to that would be, well, like that's just how it goes. Sorry, but I can't understand the frustration. And so for something that is more upside, that has some upside to it, it does take more time to underwrite an asset like that. And so we do like to kind of make it a level playing field, where it's like for an auction and a seal bid, you have a firm end date, right? Because there's a lot of people that
you have to. I mean,
because
all those are price discovery mechanisms, right? And it's like buying this domain. Like, the seller says that it's worth, 30,000, but I don't think it is. And so I offer a price, but he can't run an auction because I'm the only buyer in the market. And so there's not, multiple buyers or a time limit to do it. And so auctions are always used for price discovery, and they work well if you have multiple buyers and you have a firm end date. The problem with oil and gas assets is that the NAV can change on a month-to-month basis.
Well, we just had an auction not too long ago where in that time period, gas just got absolutely hammered.
Yeah.
So when we underwrote that asset, like before it went up, it was a totally different number. Than obviously once the auction ended. So it's kind of a double-edged sword for sure. But we initially, so when we launched, just because I think I mentioned this on the last one as well, but we didn't want to look like idiots, like pushing out an auction and not getting any bids. Even though we had spent 2 years like just rigorously testing this bidding modal that we had built. But there was a point early on where I just said, let's wait until I feel like we've at least established a smidgen of buyer saturation. So everything was negotiated sale to start out. just because obviously, we had more listings and so on and so forth. Now we have close to 4,000 users, and so we have,
Nice.
so it's been great. We haven't spent hardly any money on marketing either. So we feel like we're on a pretty good trajectory, but we felt like once October, November came around, it was really time to start testing those out. And kind of like the first sale we did, just seeing the first auction go through and it actually close and go through smoothly. It was kind of like, okay, well, I'm really glad me grinding on testing out little features here and there. And one auction going back, I can't tell you how many emails and Jira tickets I had to create back to our team. We use an offshore team in India to do some of the heavy lifting. So anyways, that was, but now we launched auctions and then we built out the new sealed bid feature. So that was a new feature that we released in November.
Yeah. It's always a good feeling when you find actual product market fit.
Yeah.
It's like us, so like our events, it's like nice when you put in all this work and people actually show up and have a good time. And you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But trust me, even like the day before, you're like, fuck, is anybody going to show up? Right. Like, I know we pulled it off like 20 times, but like this could be the one.
It never gets,
100%. I can absolutely level with that. So
how
do you guys make money?
How do we make money? So everything is on it's transaction fee right now. We do have a premium model where, buyers can sign up to look at deals a week in advance. It's $150 a month. Nice. That's not a huge chunk of our business, obviously.
Yeah.
We are, as I mentioned a second ago, just on the data front, we are building a product that will be a low monthly cost. We anticipate.
Can you talk much about what that's going to be?
So I can give a high level. I mean, we're going to use public data. I won't go too much into it yet. At some point, I would like to work with you guys on that, but
he'll come on the show.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully not that long. No, so this other product here, we're going to be releasing it hopefully at the end of the year, or early next year, depending on timing. But that will, the goal is that by 2024, more than half of our revenue is recurring.
Cool.
So we'll see where it goes. But that was a lot of, the capital raise that, I'd probably say at least half of that is going towards this data piece as well.
That's exciting, man.
Yeah.
So if there are investors listening to the show or owners of assets that want to liquidate assets, where do they find Energy Domain? Is it energydomain.com?
Energydomain.com. Cool. And I'm very publicly facing. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn.
It's on Twitter.
Yeah.
You're really cool with him. He's on Instagram.
I'm on Instagram as well. Yeah. Colin and I get some DMs, see him throwing on his rucksack and whatnot. I was DMing him the other day, like, hey, where do you get your weights?
Yeah. No, it's funny.
I'm kind of interested in checking that because I just like being outside,
No, one of, before you walked into the office, boss was like, you've been rucking in this cold weather? I'm like, hell yeah, I've been rucking. He's like, oh, you haven't been posting Instagram stories? I was like, I figured people were probably tired of seeing my stories. I was like, although like 6 or 7 people have started rucking.
I bet. Them, so. Yeah, no, I enjoy it. I don't love running, I mean, I used to. I played soccer growing up, this kind of thing.
Running actually hurts me now.
Yeah,
so
so it takes, once you get in your 30s, man.
Yeah.
Then you start the recovery's a little longer.
Jake, I've been trying to get Jake to start rucking again, but he's got like NAM flashbacks from doing it in the Marines. So
it wasn't fun when it was mandatory and you had like 100-pound packs.
Yeah.
Do it every day.
Yeah, I can see that. No, I like getting out. So, just in the last few weeks, so my wife works at a school in Fort Worth called All Saints. She's a 4th grade teacher. And so my kids go there too. And so she takes them, probably half the days of the week. And the other days, like they leave at 7:00. I'm like, I don't know what to do with free time. Like So if it's nice, I'll just go on like an hour-and-a-half walk. I'll throw in a podcast or just answer emails or whatever.
I don't rucking.
Yeah. Right.
Situation.
And I live in a very, very undulated neighborhood.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. So like you said, I think walking up the hills might be the route to go.
That's the secret. That's the secret that Jeff Messina taught me.
Secret to actual
So you run down the hills and walk up them. So
right.
Cool. We're going to start getting oil and gas rucks going on. So man. Cool, man. Well, dude, appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. I know you've got a busy agenda with NAPE and making it
might be time for a cocktail.
So yeah, I'm sure you got a long few days planned ahead of you. So if you're listening and you want to check out Energy Domain, Can anyone sign up for an account to check out deals?
Yeah.
Do you need to be an accredited investor to sign
Yeah,
up?
so you get on. Yeah, so you get on. You'll check box. Just to verify that you're an accredited investor. We don't ask up front for bank information. That's something we might ask for, once we get into closing and placing offers and all that. But so that's kind of the high level. So you don't have to.
This is the part, since he's a broker dealer, where I have to give out the disclaimer.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. No. So we, when you sign, it's free to create an account. You check a few boxes. You can look at deals, and then once you actually want to make a bid, we'll collect ID information and all that.
Cool. So if you're listening, you want to check it out, hop over to energydomain.com. We will leave a link to the website in our show notes. Please share the episode with a friend. I've been like begging at the end of every episode, like, please share our show.
Please clap.
Yeah. We'll catch you guys on the next one.